On the 21st of July, 1978, Elias Grey, a 45-year-old ranger, discovered unusual tracks near the eastern end of the Valley of 10,000 Smokies. The tracks did not belong to bears or any other known animal in the park. They led to a small crevice in the rock, from which a slight noise came. Near the entrance lay a metal fragment with a partially legible inscription. Elias picked up the find and tucked it into his uniform pocket. Until 1976, Elias had worked as a private detective in Seattle, specializing in finding missing people. His career was cut short after a tragedy. In December 1975, his wife Laura was found dead in the woods near the city. The official version read, an accident, an attack by a wild animal. But Elias suspected a connection to his latest investigation, where he dug up information about corrupt officials. There was no proof, and 6 months of fruitless search for the truth had broken him. In July 1976, he accepted a position as a ranger in Katmai, one of the most remote national parks in the United States, a place where volcanoes neighbor the largest population of brown bears, and the Valley of 10,000 Smokes, formed by a 1912 eruption, resembles another planet. The radio transmitter on Elias's belt suddenly came to life. "Gray, answer the base. We have an emergency. 2 German tourists are missing from your sector. Last seen yesterday at the entrance to the valley. Contact base immediately. Over." Elias looked at the metal chip in his hand, then at the dark entrance to the crevice. There shouldn't be any machinery in his sector. He'd finally found some peace during his 2 years in the park, but now he felt a familiar chill along his spine, the same one that in Seattle always signaled the beginning of a dangerous investigation. On the 22nd of July, 1978, an empty camping tent stood on a flat spot in the southern part of the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. Elias Grey methodically surveyed the scene, noting every detail. The German couple, Anna Weber and Lucas Hoffmann, had disappeared between the evening of the 20th and the morning of the 21st of July. Their last check call to the park's base was at 7:40 p.m. on the 20th of July. Inside the tent was a mess. Sleeping bags unzipped, personal belongings scattered. An expensive camera with a broken lens lay by the entrance. Elias checked it. There was no memory card. There were drops of blood on the tarpaulin floor. 50 meters from the tent, the ranger found car tire tracks, clear tread prints in the soft, volcanic ash. Vehicles are forbidden in this part of the park, except for emergency services, which have not traveled here for the last 2 months. Elias took photos and measurements of the tread. The tread pattern was unusual, not standard for Park Service vehicles. The tracks went northeast, toward the less visited part of the valley, where the activity of fumaroles, volcanic gas outcrops, made it difficult to travel and survey the area. At 2:30 p.m., the ranger found himself in the village of King Salmon, 40 kilometers from the park boundary. Here he met Tanis, a 72-year-old hunter from the Athabascan people. The old man was known among the rangers for his intimate knowledge of the terrain. Tanis listened to Elias and, after a moment's silence, told him that twice in recent weeks he had seen strange animal behavior in the area of the northern fumaroles. Bears were avoiding the salmon-rich rivers near the valley, and birds were avoiding parts of the lowlands, though there was no apparent reason for this. 3 years ago, in 1975, a hunter from Anchorage disappeared in the same area, Tanis added. The authorities said it was an accident, but we didn't find a body. Bears don't do that. They leave traces of their meal. Elias jotted down the information in his notebook. Details about the hunter's disappearance might be in the park's archives. Strange that he hadn't heard about this incident before. Back at the base at 1745, Elias requested data on the vehicles that had entered the park in the past fortnight. Only standard tour buses and a few private vehicles with camping passes in authorized areas, far from where the couple had disappeared, were listed. At 7:20 p.m., the ranger checked the records for the disappearance of the hunter mentioned by Tanis. A brief description remained on file. James Harris, age 41, reportedly drowned while crossing the Yukak River on the 15th of August, 1975. No body was found. The Yukak River flowed 2 kilometers from where the hikers now disappeared. Elias spread the metal fragment he'd found on the table and examined it under a magnifying glass. The fragment looked like part of some industrial device, perhaps a pump or a generator. The partially preserved inscription could have been part of a company name or equipment model. At 8:15 p.m., the phone rang. It was the Anchorage Police Department. The missing hikers' belongings contained the contacts of relatives in Germany who had already been notified of the incident. The family insisted on searching, promising to fly in 3 days. At 22:30, Elias returned to his hut. By the light of the desk lamp, he scrutinized the map of the valley. If the tire tracks went northeast, they probably led to old geological stations abandoned in the 1960s. The area was considered dangerous because of unstable ground and toxic gas emissions, so regular patrols didn't look there. On the morning of the 23rd of July, Elias prepared the equipment for the survey of the northern fumaroles: gas mask, special suit, measuring devices for determining the composition of the air. In his rucksack, he put a 2-day supply of food, water, flares, and medicines. He informed the park management about the planned route. At 8:15, he left on a service all-terrain vehicle to the border of the no-go zone, then continued on foot, following the tire tracks. By noon, the tracks led him to a small canyon where volcanic gases normally accumulated. Here, the prints abruptly stopped, as if the car had vanished into thin air. Examining the rocky walls of the canyon, Elias noticed fresh scratches in the rock, as if something heavy had struck the stone. Climbing higher, he found a hidden passage, a narrow crevice narrow enough for a small vehicle to pass through. The entrance was camouflaged with moss and artificially attached rocks. Inside the passage, the ranger found a scrap of paper with the Raven Creek Prospecting logo and the date December 7th, 1978. 10 days ago. The name of the company didn't tell him anything. Advancing down the narrow corridor, Elias heard a distant mechanical noise. The sound, completely out of place in the wilderness of the reserve, echoed off the walls. An engine? A generator? A drilling rig? Whatever it was working right now, hidden deep within the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. The ranger switched off the torch and moved toward the sound, treading with extreme caution. The tunnel gradually widened, turning into an adit, clearly man-made. The walls showed signs of recent rock working. A faint light glimmered ahead. Suddenly the sound stopped. There was silence, broken only by the dripping of water somewhere in the depths of the tunnel. And then Elias heard voices, human voices, coming closer to where he was. Elias froze. 2 men were discussing a shipment of equipment in some Lester. Accidentally hitting a rock, the ranger gave away his presence. "Who's here?" A harsh voice was heard, accompanied by the sound of a trigger being cocked. The ranger started to retreat towards the exit, but hurt his ankle in the darkness. A shot rang out behind him. The bullet struck the rock next to his head. Elias fired a flare into the tunnel, temporarily blinding his pursuer, and made his way out despite his injury. "We have a problem. There was a stranger in the tunnel. Looks like a ranger," came the words from the adit. With a broken radio, a damaged leg, and surrounded by poisonous gases, Elias realized he couldn't get very far. Feeling dizzy from the pain and toxic fumes, he lost consciousness. On July 24th, a rescue helicopter found Elias unconscious 2 kilometers from the suspected adit site. His notebook, camera, and metal fragment had disappeared. It seems he lost them along the way. The search team did not find the adit he described. The traces were destroyed by the night downpour. Without evidence, park management classified the incident as an accident. Elias spent 2 months in an Anchorage hospital. After returning to Katmai, he was restricted from administrative work due to his injury. By December 1978, the search for the hikers had officially ended. The story of the underground mine remained only in Elias's memories, which no one believed, but the ranger wasn't about to give up. Even chained to his office chair, he began to gather information. Slowly, methodically, as he had once done in Seattle. Someone had to answer for the disappearance of 2 innocent tourists, and for what was going on in the depths of the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. The 25th of April, 1980. Elias Grey was perusing the morning paper in the cafe. The television was reporting on the eruption of Mount St. Helens, a news item that piqued the ranger's professional interest. A lot had changed in the intervening 2 years since the incident in the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. The breach happened in March. In the photo from the ceremony of issuing new mining licenses, Elias noticed a man with a crow tattooed on his neck, among the representatives of Horizon Mining Logistics. The company was actively expanding operations in western Alaska. Posing as a potential investor, Elias visited Horizon's office. He then followed the tattooed man to a warehouse complex. There, the ranger noticed crates of equipment with Raven Creek written underneath the Horizon sticker. On the 27th of April, Elias met with journalist Paul Reed of the Anchorage Daily News. "Sounds interesting, but where's the proof?" Paul asked. "The connection between the missing hikers and this company seems strained." Elias showed the photos taken outside the warehouse and a diagram of the possible connections. Horizon Mining was founded in 1979, a year after the Katmai incident, the ranger explained. But their founder, Marvin Lester, was previously in the small gold mining business. Raven Creek was his underground operation, which he legalized under a new name. Suppose so. But even if the company was mining illegally in the reserve, where's the connection to the disappearance of the tourists? Paul asked. "They could have filmed something. Remember, the memory card from the camera disappeared," replied Elias. By early May, Paul had gathered information about Horizon. The company had made an impressive leap to become an influential player in the Alaskan mining industry. Lester's unclear source of startup capital was suspicious. On May 15th, they checked Horizon's office in King Salmon, just 50 kilometers from Katmai. The office was closed, but a local salesman said employees periodically go on expeditions towards the park. "They say they are doing geological exploration with permission from the administration," he added. "But the strange thing is that they always arrive one way and leave another." On the 20th of May, an anonymous letter arrived to the editor with a picture of Lester shaking hands with a high-ranking official. The caption read, "Meeting after obtaining license to develop Site 37, August 1978. Paul phoned Elias. "Site 37. Could it be related to that entrance 37 you heard about in the tunnel?" "License obtained in August 1978, just a month after the tourist disappeared," Elias remarked. "Too convenient a coincidence." The next day, Paul published an article about possible irregularities in the issuing of licenses to mining companies. The reaction was lightning fast. The editorial board was flooded with threats of lawsuits. On the 25th of May, Elias noticed surveillance. A black SUV, which looked like the car of the man with the tattoo, followed him and tried to run him off the road. The next day, Paul was suspended from the investigation, and the collected materials were confiscated by newsroom management. "They're afraid of losing advertisers," the journalist explained. "I'm sorry, but I have to stop cooperating." On the 2nd of June, Elias received a letter from the Katmai administration demanding that he return to work and refrain from actions that are reputationally damaging to the Park Service. That same evening, his flat was broken into. All of the investigation materials disappeared. The police registered the case as a domestic burglary. On the 10th of June, the ranger returned to administrative work in the park. Externally, he discontinued the investigation. Management noted his return to professional duties, but in the evenings, in the quiet of his office, Elias began a new investigation, more cautious and deeply conspiratorial. He realized he faced a serious adversary with influence and resources. No physical evidence, only encrypted notes in a personal diary. No direct contact, only anonymous inquiries through trusted contacts. No suspicious travel, only careful analysis of available data. The ranger was preparing for the long game. It might take years, but he intended to solve the mystery of Anna and Lucas's disappearance and stop illegal operations in the park he'd sworn to protect. Rain drummed on the window of Elias Grey's office in Katmai Park. On the desk was a fresh newspaper clipping. Horizon Mining Logistics announces major contract with federal government, and a shabby folder labeled Case 37. Over 4 years of undercover investigation, Elias has built up a detailed archive hidden in a cache beneath the floorboards of his cabin. But there was still no direct evidence of a link between Horizon and the disappearance of the tourists 6 years ago. A phone call interrupted his musings. "Elias, it's Jim from the Land Department. Horizon has applied for a license extension. They want to include the northern sector where you found the camper tent in a 78. Why now, 6 years later?" On the 19th of June, in the Anchorage City Archives, Elias found the answer. A geological survey report on a large gold deposit in the northern part of the valley. The document was classified until 1983. Now Horizon was in a hurry to get the development rights. In the evening, the ranger spotted the stakeout, a dark sedan with tinted windows. Waiting for him in his motel room was an envelope with a photo of the missing hikers and the inscription on the back. "Jack Cowan knows the truth. The 21st of June, Hammond Creek Base." Jack Cowan is a former fellow ranger who quit in 1979. Rumor has it he took a job with a private company. On the 21st of June, Elias entered the Hammond Creek Base, 70 kilometers from the park boundary. Hiding behind a stack of pipes, he spotted Cowan exiting the administration building and heading toward the utility rooms. Following him, Elias found himself in an empty hangar where he discovered a camouflaged hatch in the floor. Hiding behind some crates, he soon saw Cowan and Marvin Lester, the founder of Horizon, going up in the lift. "The final decision will be tomorrow," Lester was saying. "The police have closed their case. 6 years, no trace. Nobody's going to dig into the tourist story again." "What about evidence?" Cowan asked. "They'll be destroyed by tomorrow morning. Entrance 37 will be sealed forever. No one will ever know what happened to those Germans." After waiting for them to leave, Elias went down the technical shaft to the underground level. Among the archive cabinets, he found a file cabinet called Project Chronology, with documents dating back to 1977. An entry dated the 22nd of July 1978 read, "Intruder Incident, Elimination of a Security Threat to the Project." There were also photos from the memory card of a tourist camera. Anna and Lucas had accidentally filmed the camouflaged adit entrance and equipment. Suddenly, an alarm went off. Elias, fleeing from the guards, crept down the ventilation shaft to the surface and disappeared under the cover of darkness and rain. The 22nd of June, 9:30 a.m. Elias gave copies of the documents to the Attorney General's office, the FBI, and Deutsche Welle, and the family of the missing hikers. At 10:15 a.m., as the ceremonial meeting was beginning in Horizon's office, FBI agents entered the building with a search warrant. Lester, Cowan, and 3 other executives were arrested on charges of illegal resource extraction and involvement in the disappearance of the hikers. On the 24th of June, an investigative team discovered entrance 37 inches in the valley, a disguised entrance to underground tunnels. Anna and Lucas's personal belongings were found deep inside the complex. No bodies were found, but bloodstains in the adit belonged to the tourists. The investigation revealed that Raven Creek, then Horizon Mining, had been illegally mining gold for 6 years through underground adits connected to natural volcanic cavities. Tourists accidentally discovered the entrance and were killed to cover up the operation. Jack Cowan, who decided to cooperate with the investigation, admitted that he knew about the murder and helped cover up the trail all these years. On the 5th of July, 1984, Elias stood at the plaque erected in honor of Anna and Lucas on the valley viewpoint. Justice had been served, but the price had been high. The 15th of October, 1986. The first snow covered the Valley of 10,000 Smokes with a white blanket, hiding the scars left by man and nature. Elias Grey walked slowly up the slope to the observation deck, leaning on his cane, a consequence of an old injury and the events of 2 years ago. A lot had changed in the 2 years since the Horizon Mining expose. The federal investigation culminated in a high-profile trial. Marvin Lester received 25 years in prison for organizing illegal mining and being involved in the murder of tourists. Jack Cowan, who agreed to cooperate with the investigation, served a reduced 10-year sentence. The uncovering of a corruption network led to the resignation of 3 high-ranking officials. Katmai National Park received additional funding and increased protection from the encroachment of mining companies. Elias reached the top of the slope and looked out over the valley that stretched to the horizon. Nature had all but hidden the traces of human intervention. Where entrance 37 had been, there was now only a natural rock formation. Now, in his position as Chief Conservation Officer of the park, he had the opportunity to prevent similar disturbances in the future. The newly introduced volcanic activity monitoring system also made it possible to monitor any unauthorized entry into the area. Life went on. Elias no longer felt the weight of unfulfilled duty. The ghosts of the past had not disappeared completely, but he had learnt to live in peace with them. The coming snow covered the footprints, but it did not erase the memory, neither of the dead nor of the justice that had been served, however belatedly. A group of hikers appeared in the distance, heading for the observation deck. Elias adjusted his ranger badge and walked toward them. His duty to the dead was done. Now it was time to serve the living. Friends, the story of Ranger Katmai has come to an end, but some mysteries remain unsolved. What really happened to Elias's wife? Was her death really an accident, or was she also a victim of a criminal organization? And who was the mysterious informant who guided Elias throughout the investigation? The man who risked his life to help bring justice? If the story of Ranger Katmai touched you as much as it did me, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Many more mysteries from the most remote corners of America's wilderness areas lie ahead. Share your guesses in the comments. See you in the next issue.